everyone, thought I'd come in and continue the discussion on just my life story, sharing out of my pictures and the basic framework of my life experience, right? So let me see, I think this is the 20th video. I would say I have way more pictures and way more to tell about. It seems like my childhood into my 20s. And even then, I mean, we're just scraping the surface. I've given kind of a rough outline of what my life has been like. There's always a lot of funny stories that I don't have time for. And, I remember a lot of stuff from when I was a kid. That's the funny thing is, absent-minded as I am and stuff. But it sure seems like once we hit 2000, so I think it might be just an age thing, but it just seems like everything's just been kind of like a blur. It seems like, so I was born in 75, so 2000's approximately half my lifetime ago. So, and it seems like when I look at from when I was a kid to there, everything took a long time to unfold, but since then it's just like boom, 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 and next thing you know. And so anyways, the last video I was talking about my cab driving experience, and so I just kind of wanted to sort of outline, what it's been like since I've left home and tried to be on my own. And like, if you go back and look at the 90s, like 96, I went home for Christmas. 97, my dad came to see me for a change. But then 98, 99, I went home for Christmas. And that would be the last time I would see my dad living in that house on D Avenue. So that's where we moved when I was in middle school and went to high school. And my grandma had that place over on Palmetto Drive on the canal. So that was like, my formative years. I was brought up there in that area on Big Carpet and going swimming over there at my grandma's house. So after 2000, my grandma moved up to Fort Lauderdale. And my dad had to buy his own house down in Key West. So I don't even have very many pictures. I don't think I have a single picture of any of that because so let me see. Then in 2004, I went down to see them, and then I went down in 2014 during summer to see Nine Inch Nails, and it has been 10 years. So now it seems like it was every year I would go down and see them, and now it's like every 10 years. So I feel like I had to make it down this year, or I'll be past my decade, I guess. So now I'm seeing him on a rate of every decade. Well, anyways, I just found a few last pictures here that I might have left out, and since I left the Florida Keys, or since I'd seen my dad last, so he had this one good friend. So sometimes he'd make friends when he was working at the convalescent center, and he was running the maintenance department. And he had this guy named Joseph from Poland. So that was like one of the few people that stayed. A really good friend of my dad's, and would come over to our. We would have barbecue on the weekend over at my grandma's. So everybody liked this guy. So the nice thing is, my dad says he would never ever put on a suit and a tie, right? Never ever ever. Well, he must have liked this guy because he did for this occasion, and I'm going to share this with you. Well, that's Joseph and his wife. I think she came to work at the convalescent center, and that's how they met. So kind of sadly, but so be it. You meet the right partner. And now this is my dad and his brother. So my dad's on the end here. Said he would never dress like that in a million years, but he must have loved his friend Joseph. Now this is his oldest brother. Don on the end is the college professor. And then these guys have all been kind of, maintenance and construction guys, just happy to work their jobs, And then I've shared my cousin Steven. I don't have any pictures of my sister. But I have this one picture of my cousin Nessa, probably in her 20s, and I'm thinking this must be one of her kids. And then that looks more like my cousin Carrie when she was a teenager, so probably not sure when these pictures were taken, but this is just some of the last pictures that I found. And this must be 2000, because it looks like I've got braids here, and I've gone to see Ann Esch from KMFDM. And if you saw my last video, I was wearing an MDFMK shirt. So that was after they broke up. And so anyways, I don't have a lot of pictures from there. But I wanted to just kind of go back and go over that part of my life because I feel like this is when I started becoming more and more distant from my family, and where boy, just kind of going my own way. And so for me in 2000, I was going through that weird stuff at the Acacia, so the visionary stuff and all that, kind of scared me out of there. And I went and stayed in Greeley for 2 years. Now, living in Greeley, I didn't spend a whole lot of time at home. It was just sort of like where I would come to get away from Denver and sleep and keep my things. So, and it worked out great for Chris because then he didn't have me around as much. But every once in a while, I'd bring people up to the house, like I'd bring Zach with me, and then I was trying to help Charlie move to Greeley by letting him sleep in my room, but then Chris just left us together. So along with that, those 2 years were special because it really, it gave me wheels. It was just like, otherwise I was just riding a bus. So I was going to the club a lot more and getting to know the club scene better. And we'd have the international DJs come around. So that's when me and Zach would go, like, see Anthony Popper, Christopher Lawrence, uh, and of course, some of the stuff I'd mentioned, I feel like I've come really close to danger. I used to pick up people in the bad side of town and take them to their drug dealers and stuff like that, and they would thank me for not judging them. Like, I remember I was dropping off this couple. I think I took them to their crack dealer, and the guy was telling his wife, his girlfriend to tip me, for God's sakes. I mean, I took them to their crack dealer and I didn't judge them. So I feel like I've lived a life where I've come really close to people that are like, I've known people that are homeless, on SSI, people that are on drugs, and and so I feel like I've really come close to being homeless myself, but I'm almost like, I'm almost tempted to just be homeless, to like stop having to try so hard, because I feel like the way things are shaped, it's kind of meant to make people stay in a point where you're just struggling, like you'll never really get ahead, It's kind of a nasty system, So, being a cab driver, it's probably one of the stupidest, craziest things I've done, but at least, I got out okay. And I want to say, I had a good friend. So during the cab driving years, I was hanging out with a few people, like Scott and Jason. They were living at the Art and Action building, so I'd come and hang out with them quite a bit. And we were doing naughty things, and it wasn't so much me, but my friend Scott and those guys. There's some guy there named Gnome, and I think they were harassing the homeless people living in the alley and doing stuff like that. And I laughed about it, but then then I had this one friend, Jeremy, and his girlfriend Alda. Well, I let her come along with me a few times, and when she saw the stuff that they do, she was really upset, man, and she'd go back and tell Jeremy about it. And he's like, Jody, I don't want you taking my wife around your friend Scott ever again. So Scott was a close friend of mine, and I kind of liked hanging out with him because I felt like, kind of the same with Zach, I felt like, I'm trying to be a better fighter, and these guys were helping teach me to fight, but at the same time, these guys weren't really the best people to be around, not like a really good influence for me in some ways, so like, I'm not saying, I agree with everything Scott was doing, but Scott ended up in prison, by the way. So later on, he got with this woman, and he ended up going to prison because she wanted to leave him, and he wasn't gonna let her leave him. So that's where, I don't ever want to turn into somebody like Scott. So he's one of those people, if he's gonna be an example to me, maybe one not to follow, but he was a good, he was from Kung Fu class. I met him when he was a black belt, and he's always been a good sparring partner to me, and he's really helped push me to be a better fighter. And then there was Jason up the hall. He's the one I talked about earlier, so we'd already known each other a couple of years, and that's where I went to Visionary Slip, and Jason was filling me in on stuff. And so, like, I've known these people a while, so I did spend some time over that building. And we had that friend named Max. He was this German guy that he said, he used to have the house and the wife and the kids and everything, and now he's just a bum living on the street, So Scott brought home Max, and Max was a cool older German dude that we, like to joke around with and smoke pot with and stuff. But like, having friends like this really helps give me insight, see. I don't make friends with very many people that are well-to-do, by the way, and when I do, it's very rare. So living like that, put myself in danger, so to speak, as a cab driver. That could be like some of the, I don't know, closest to the streets I've ever been, like that. And then we had the friends up the hall in the art place. They had really good artists, but those guys like smoking crystal. And I thought it'd be fun to try some. So they had what you call glass, so I've tried different drugs with different people, like not a lot. Like I won't shoot anything, but I've tried a little coke and stuff like that. I don't know. I think we had opium. I think I've tried a little opium. I've never got hooked on any of these drugs. The only thing that I really come back to is pot. Like I don't even like to drink that much. But it's just a matter of they say just say no. I'm like KNOW, so I want to know what people are on because I can't tend to judge people. I think people are kind of losers if they have a drug addiction. You just think these people are a fucking loser. But if you try the drugs they're doing, you can kind of understand how they get addicted. So that's the difference between me and them. I don't really feel attracted to it. So I had a chance to try this glass, this crystal meth, and I only took like 1 or 2 good hits on it. I was like, I think we made like a pipe out of some tinfoil, and we burned it, and I think I got a good inhalation on it, maybe 1 or 2 good hits of that. And it lasted for 2 days. Like it was like you feel really good, like a good clean high. But then when you come down from it, it's like doo-doo-doo, like you could be really forgetful and dingy. So this is where the drug is dangerous. It's like you totally can't focus. And obviously if you do that stuff on a regular basis, like people's teeth start falling out and stuff. So that's where like, I don't even want to recommend trying anything like that. But for me, to say I've tried a few things here and there, to me, I felt like it's definitely enlightened me quite a bit. But at the same time, I would say that's probably most of my naughty business. I remember one time I picked up this guy and he had ecstasy, and it was such a nice clean hit of ecstasy, and so we just like hung out all night and listened to techno music, and it was kind of like tripping on good acid but without the psychedelic effect, so that's something like I could understand people wanting to do that a time or two. But then it depends on how they make it. So I've tried to find the same thing. It's like you can't find it as good. So I've tried a few other opportunities, and it's like, So, and then there's Zach. So now Zach is somebody who, he inherited a lot of money because the white family that raised him, the man was molesting him and his daughters or something. So I think they were able to take him to court eventually. And so it's what you call admittance by suicide. So when the guy committed suicide, the kids were receiving a big payout. And so he, before I met him, he had a lot of money. And he spent it all on partying and all over the country. And then for some reason just ended up in Denver. I think that's because he was going to a military school out in Kansas, and then somehow was able to get into Denver, and so he's been receiving a smaller paycheck, but he would run out of money every week and borrow money, and we'd have to wait for him to pay us back, and he was in this vicious cycle of just drinking and partying and living off of these paychecks. But it was very enlightening hanging out with Zach. He helped introduce me to Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu. He introduced me to a lot of good techno, which I talked about in my last video. And he brought me really close to the street life. Now this is the kind of person that he calls those hotlines and goes out and has sex with people that are just out to party and play. Doesn't matter, not too particular. And so he'd ask me not to just show up at his house. One time I showed up at his house and I'm knocking on the door and I just see his ass on this lady. So he's probably like one of the people, along with Scott, that have really shown me close to the street life. And so I feel happy that I'm able to like get really close and see everything up close, but I kind of came out unscathed and didn't end up with any being beaten to death or end up with a methamphetamine habit or anything like that. So but I had to give it up because it seemed like I wasn't making money fast enough, and with me living up in Greeley and everything, I was starting to lose my patience though, because there's just so many people that try to get out of paying, and it's so hard to get the money and keep paying into it. And so when I decided to quit driving cab, I invited my friend Charlie to come with me. We all were working at StarTech, the call center up there, and it just really sucked being stuck up there with no transportation. So we were borrowing somebody's car every week to go to the club, and we're trying to like do him a favor by, you know, if he needed some pot, we'd bring him some pot, you know. And at some point he's like, you know, I can't do it anymore. I mean, you guys are putting gas in it, but I have to pay for the maintenance. You know, we're putting miles on his vehicle and whatever. So like, we didn't want to be stuck in Greeley with no transportation. Now the thing is Charlie came to stay in Greeley because he had some ex-girlfriends that were attacking him and doing stuff to him. But I think once he got stuck in Greeley, he realized it wasn't worth staying for. So what happened was Charlie went into town and got a small apartment. And it just had like 2 sections in it and a little kitchenette and a bathroom. And so he had this section and I had that section. But he really didn't like living with me because I had a really bad bronchitis cough for one thing. So we didn't have our own privacy and da-da-da-da-da. He was the one on the lease and I wasn't. But then he bailed out on me to go find another place. But then he kind of power tripped on me, like, you know, he could come and go when he wants to. And so, I don't know, like, I think we just had a falling out because I just got tired of him being disrespectful to me. And so, like, I think I just moved out of there without letting him know. So it made him look bad because then he would receive the eviction. But I was really mad at Charlie because he was being disrespectful in a lot of different ways, you know, which I could get into if you want, but we were just close friends, you know. We didn't have sex and stuff, but like after he moved out, the funny thing is that maybe he was drunk, but like, you know, I shared his bed one time at his new place, and he like reached down my pants and said something like, I've always wanted to have sex with you, you know, and he like put his hand like clear down in there too, boy. Whoo, I was like, whoa, dude. And then, you know, on top of that said, like, you know, I can kind of forgive stuff like that a little bit, especially, you know, like it's no harm, but it's just along with all the disrespect, you know. That's why I did it that way. And then I had this big black friend named T. He was cool as hell. He came up from like the Dallas Fort Worth area, and we met him at the club because he's just this goofy guy out there dancing by himself with his drink, you know. And I started talking to him. I'm like, dude, you're just like me. I'm the same way, you know. I'll be like the only person out there on the dance floor. And we got to talking, and it was so cool hanging out with him because he liked all the old school industrial stuff, like the Wax Trax style, Frontline Assembly and all that. But he also liked the trance house, so it was great because, you know, me and him could be listening to the trance house. So, you know, so as I was coming into my cab driving years, which is funny, coming into the transportation industry, that's also when I was getting into trance techno. Now, I think this is an important turning point in my life because, you know, the music I cherish the most is the music I was brought up with, and most of the music I knew, I learned it from my dad, you know. And I felt like, you know, I came to Denver when it was all too late. Like, I feel like everything's at its tail end, and like all that stuff was kind of like simmering down, you know. So you know, there's cool music coming out here and there, but like all together it's like there's nothing new. Like it seems like Skinny Puppy, Frontline Assembly, you know, all those kind of bands are the last ones to really do great, and everything after that is just like imitation. But then even though like these guys will be putting out albums, so there'll be like a new Ministry, a new KMFDM, a new Skinny Puppy, but it's just not exciting anymore. It's not like it used to be when those people would put out a new album. It would be some mind-blowing experience. But now that it's been past 2000, you know, from 2000 on, it almost seems like any of these old guys put out an album, it's just another album. Like, I'm glad they're still alive. I'm glad they're still making music, but like, there's just no time like the before. And so for me to get into the trance house, I feel like this was an area of music that, now the thing about like house music in general is it has a different lineage. Like, it comes from disco and funk music, and then what you call the Detroit techno. It kind of has its own lineage, and I really think it's just a matter of fact that when you play a synthesizer and you use psychedelics, then there's just a certain way they play. And so maybe, you know, the synthesizer itself encourages people to play a certain way, and if you're a trippy person and you play trippy music on it, you know. So there's this other lineage of music where I think, you know, can be pretty vast, like industrial music, post-industrial can be pretty vast. So I like the lineage that is psychedelic and magical. So like if you go back to who I listen to, like Cab Voltaire and Chris and Cozy and those type of artists, I feel like they totally support my agenda on the psychedelic experience and psychic awareness and everything. Because the psychedelic experience is really just a psychic experience, you know. So like so now I'm finding this area of trance music. It seems to be a very similar in the psychedelicness. It's just that industrial music is taking us through a dark and heavy time, where I feel like, you know, it's part of a cycle where like you really had to been there kind of thing. Like, so when that music was coming out, it was sort of being intuitive. It was intuitive music, and it was sort of like being channeled for the people of those times. Like you really needed to have that sort of music therapy coming through to you. And so like to listen to old industrial music is more of a nostalgic feeling. So I feel like that we're moving into like a higher vibrational time. Things are finer and faster, and I really don't get that satisfaction following like what we call the goth industrial scene. I feel like they've totally lost the psychedelic edge of it. So there's more like into like the spooky stuff, like it's hardcore and spooky, but it's really not psychedelic. So I felt like that's what trance does for me, is it satisfies my need for psychedelic music. And like there's a lot of really boring techno nowadays, you know. There's like so many people doing it. There's a lot of people that are just copycats. There's a few people that are like super original and awesome, just like industrial music, and then there's a bunch of people that are copycats, you know. So I don't really like the big names as much, like Tiesto and Paul Oakenfold as much. Like it's all right, you know, but like since I discovered Christopher Lawrence, he's been pretty consistent, and the reason I respect him is I think he's just a for real person. He's not pretentious. You know, he's married, he's got kids, he's not ashamed of it. And since then I've discovered John 00 Fleming, and he's a British guy. Seems like such a nice, sweet guy. You know, funny thing about these techno guys is they're not like freaks, you know, like he's just a regular looking guy, lives in a regular looking house. And they're making the best, some of the most authentic music like that, you know. So it's really the only thing I've really got right now. So I feel like, you know, I've watched kind of industrial music and all that stuff it kind of merges with the goth music. And so there's something there, but like, it's not the same thing, you know. And it's like, okay, so there's still a community there, you know, because like, okay, since I was a cab driver and I left Greeley, I came back to Denver. So me and Charlie were going to the club a lot, you know. I think I became a regular at the club since then, so it really became part of my life. So I've been going to both the goth clubs and going to the trance stuff. So I lived with Charlie until he bailed on me. Then I bailed on him. I think I put all my stuff in storage, and then I got with my friend Chris Yaden from up in Greeley, and me and him went and stayed with his girlfriend out in Aurora, and she turned into a weirdo on us. Like she was trying to have some sort of like dominatrix relationship with Chris, and she brought home some black guy she met down at the Plasma Center. Nothing against him being a black, he's just like, you know, bringing home some guy and then letting him like take over the place. So like me and Chris had to get out of there, and so we went up to Boulder and got ourselves an art studio so we'd have a little home base to go crash out at. And so let me see, I would say that must have happened in 2003, because we were working all these dumb little jobs together. Oh yeah, that's right, we got a job with that company that, you know, we provide security to the football stuff. I can't remember what they're called right now, but it was just like crowd control, crowd management company that we were working for. So I was working at the airport because Charlie had a job at the airport, and so I was working out on Concourse B at Mission Yogurt. So they had this place with these little pizzas and ice cream. So I worked there for quite a while, and then after I quit working there, that's when me and Chris were going up to Red Rocks. I think we worked the summer at Red Rocks together. It was a pretty cool time for 2003. We were working up at Red Rocks, and one night we were coming home from one of our shows, and we thought we would spark up a doobie, and we drove right into a DUI checkpoint. So we both got arrested and got the car towed. So I got a DUI because they busted us smoking pot in the car, you know, and of course I'm not going to pass a UA if I'm a regular smoker, even if I wasn't smoking it, right? So I tried to tell him I wasn't smoking it, but my friend was, and then he goes, well, I wasn't smoking any. I'm like, dude, you were supposed to play along and tell him I wasn't smoking, dumbass. So then he acted like he thought I was trying to pin it on him, and it's like, no, dude, I was hoping he would play along and say he wanted to smoke the pot, and that I was just escorting him. I was just driving him so he could smoke and not be the driver. So I was really hoping he'd go with that story, but yeah, it really fucked us up. So I got a DUI, and then so they arrested us and let us go, and then I was supposed to report to a detective, but I didn't, you know. Instead I just I didn't know what to do, you know. So like they finally caught us in 2005, and then they put me in jail. But anyways, that's the first time I got myself arrested, actually. So, you know, here's the thing, is we were working security up at Red Rocks, and somebody gave us a joint that they confiscated, and I thought, you know, I probably shouldn't smoke this joint because it's probably going to be bad karma, right? And so we were down in Golden and sitting in front of a 7-Eleven, and so I went to spark this joint up, and just as I sparked it up, it seemed like in my mind's eye I saw an alternative route. We were going to go up Highway 93 to Boulder, and I was being shown, go up 70, go up Wadsworth, go up 36. And it was like, choom, choom, choom. And if I would have went that way, probably would have got away with it. Not saying you should smoke and drive, but, you know, I figured I could handle a few puffs of this joint, you know. And so we went up the back way up 93, and when the cops pulled us over, and I was trying to tell him I wasn't smoking, and I was hoping my partner would say he was, the cops going, well, gee, it smells so strong in here, I'm craving Twinkies. You know, I was really honored, though, you know, because the cop asked Chris, you know, do you really feel comfortable letting her drive your car up this road with pot, you know? And he's like, oh, yeah. He said, I'm such a good driver, that's why he let me do the driving, you know? So, at any rate, that was a big highlight. So I think that's when we were living up at, yeah, so I mentioned earlier, we got that warehouse space in Boulder. See, I had a friend that had a warehouse space up there previously, and he had a nice one. It's kind of like a music studio. So, anyways, it just seems like since I left the Acacia, let's see, I went and lived in Greeley for 2 years, but then after that, it's kind of like being on Rolling Rocks, because then I think I lived at the warehouse space till about 2005, and then from there went back into Denver and stayed with a friend, and moved from there to another friend's, and moved there to my own apartment, you know. So just seemed like I can never really settle down, you know, just going from job to job, place to place, you know. So I really wanted to go back and talk a little bit about this time in my life. And let's see, while I'm at it, why don't we do this? I just threw these out really quickly. Now, when I was living at that place in Boulder, my friend Scott had a girlfriend that moved up the canyon with him. So this is their cabin. So I was at their cabin. So that's that girl, Debbie. Now this is where we go to Settlers Park. There's also a really nice creek there. So that's Scott up close. That's my friend. So he was one of my closest friends. We're coming down the trail at Settlers Park there. I think I had some swords, you know, spinning some straight swords there. I was smoking a fatty. Okay, and then maybe this is just out the window, you know, coming down the canyon. So I'm thinking I must have been riding with Scott down the canyon and took some pictures of the rock outcroppings. You know, it's just really cool, Boulder Canyon. Now this is a really nice shot, you know, there's me. That's where, oh, I love climbing up on those rocks, you know, and there's the horizon looking east, you know. So when I was living up at that place in Boulder, at that warehouse space, so I was hanging out with Chris and Scott and Gardner quite a bit. Now Scott had that place up in Nederland. Him and his girlfriend Debbie moved up there and started reproducing. Ha! And then they moved into an even better place, you know. But yeah, I used to make trips up there to see them occasionally, and so let's see. And then if you go further up, Caribou Road, that's where Gardner's campsite was. So he had a teepee. Maybe he had two teepees up there, and he had, you know, a friend that needed some. You know, he kind of liked having somebody up there because he was using up the dead wood and just keeping an eye on the property, you know. So sometimes I'd get a chance to go up there and camp out. So we're like at really high altitude. That's like really close to 10,000 feet above sea level. And then when you're down at Scott's house in Netherlands, that's like 8,000 feet above sea level. So during that era of my life, I think I was planning a lot on possibly going up and living on the side of that mountain with those guys. I was thinking, you know, maybe we'll keep the warehouse space to kind of keep our stuff and then just try to live outside as much as we can, because we thought, you know, that way we'll be stronger and more conditioned to our environment, you know. So but it was a real treat. You know, we actually went up there in the middle of winter, and when you're camping out there in winter, we would put everything on a sled and then like just drag it into our campsite, and then we had a wood burning stove, and somebody had to keep feeding that fire, otherwise it got quite chilly. So Gardner wasn't up there every single night of the year. He had family down in the Denver area. He'd go stay at home sometimes or go stay with some friends up in Longmont, and then just try to get up there as much as he could because he realized it was keeping him strong, you know. So Gardner was a black belt at Shaolin, and I don't know if Chris ever got his black belt, but yeah, you know, we were all trying to be Shaolin strong and doing that. So anyways, let's see, I really wanted to cover that part of my life because between, you know, like 2007, saw my dad in 99 into 2000, and so for that whole 4 years I was kind of, let's see, going through this transition of living in Greeley to get out of Denver. I come back and I lived with Charlie for a little bit. Then I got that warehouse space. So I'm thinking 2004 I was still living up in that warehouse space, because by then we got that job. So we worked at that, boy, I still can't think of the name of it. Oh, we had to wear like those yellow clothes, you know, and just stand around and act like security at these concerts and football games. I can't think of what they're called anymore. But at any rate, we met somebody at that job whose mother owned it's like an in-home companion job. So I was an in-home companion to a couple of different older guys, you know. So I think in 2004, I was taking care of Ollie. I was in touch with this guy I met through mindphaser.com through the Frontline Assembly fan page, and we were trying to plan a trip to England. There was going to be like an industrial music festival, and it got canceled, and so I ended up canceling our tickets because I didn't want to risk going over there for nothing, because it sounded like my friend, you know, wanted to get over there and just take off and go do his own thing, and I wasn't going to stand for that. And then I got moved to a different job taking care of Pete. We called him Repeat Pete. And I got myself fired from there because I really didn't like the other person I was working with. And I made up this false report, you know. And I was saying I did this and then I smoked 2 joints. You know that song, and then I smoked 2 joints and then I smoked 2 more. And I was making up a joke, you know, like I did this chore, then I smoked another joint, then I did this chore. Because somebody told her, I think she asked Chris something about me, and he mentioned that I smoked pot. Like, he was such a dumbass. I can't believe he told her that. At any rate, she was bugging me. You know, she's smoking a cigarette and blowing her smoke on me, going, "Do you smoke?" And I'm like, "Oh, not cigarettes." She goes, "That's right, because you smoke pot." She's like, "And if I ever catch you smoking pot, I'm telling on you." So she was threatening to tell on me if I smoke pot and get me fired. You know, if she finds out that I smoke it at the house, you know. So that's why I was making this report. I was kind of mad one day, and I accidentally left the report behind. And so they were gonna like UA me and punish me and all this stuff, but like I said, you know what, forget it, I don't want to work here anymore. And then I went to see my dad for 2004. That's when I got to see I guess I finally got to see his new house. And then I went and saw my grandma's new house, and I got to see my cousin Carrie one last time. I think it's the last time I had ever seen her. Last time I seen my Uncle Bob and Aunt Mary. And then 2005, we got pulled over going up the canyon to Gardner's campsite. And that's when I was made to face my charges from the previous DUI. So let's see, when we split up, Scott was really mad at Chris. I think they were working together, and Chris was mouthing off to Scott and like, "Oh, kick your ass," you know. So they're saying Scott wasn't. So they were trying to do their own, you know, they created their own drywall crew. Chris bought all the equipment, and Gardner's the one that knows drywall, so they were going to drywall jobs, and they don't think Scott was pulling his weight, you know, so they were arguing over that. And so when I needed Scott to bail me out of jail, he used it as an opportunity to get revenge on Chris. So he told me, "I will only get you out of jail if you let me throw Chris's stuff out and take what I want, and then either that or I can leave you in jail," or I don't know. He kind of got me out and threatened not to sign, because what happened is the bonds bailman agreed to meet us the next day, and that's what gave Scott the opportunity to say, "I just won't sign the piece of paper, so either you can go back to jail or leave Colorado." And so that's what I'm saying. Scott was a close friend of mine, but he wasn't a good friend of mine, and he used me to get revenge on Chris, and I really didn't know what else to do. And I felt a lot of resentment because I noticed Chris was also getting a snotty attitude towards me anyway, so it was kind of useful to Scott at the moment. But good news is that when I had a chance to talk with Chris again, we've reconciliated, and since Scott has gone to prison, you know, Chris could also see where, you know, Scott was threatening my life over it, like, "You better not tell anyone or I'll," you know, that kind of thing. So it's really hard to explain that one. It's something I feel really bad. It's probably one of the like worst things that I've been involved in doing to somebody, to victimize them, you know. Like, thankfully, I'm not sure like how much value the stuff was that he lost, you know, but like but I would really hate to see the same thing done to myself. But this is where I think we leave that chapter of. So it's kind of a long chapter, you know. So I'm kind of going from like, okay, I left Greeley in 2002. Ended up staying with Charlie. Then we ended up staying with that lady who wanted to be a dommy mommy to Chris Yaden. Stayed at that warehouse space. So that probably lasted about 1.5 to 2 years, maybe, you know, like staying at that warehouse space. And but yeah, that was really kind of rough living, you know. And so actually what happened there was I ended up keeping my bird out at Chris's dad's house because I wanted to have someplace nice to live and not be stuck at that that warehouse space. So if you've seen my previous videos with my big green bird captain, I was looking over there thinking, I wonder if I have a picture available, but no. So my big green bird captain, I figured he had a really great relationship with Chris's dad, so I wouldn't mind letting them keep the bird as long as they want, you know, and if they go to a nursing home, they can give it back. Well, what happened was me and Chris quit talking because of the whole fucking situation with the Scott and his stuff getting thrown out. And so before I could get a hold of Chris again, those people had taken my bird to a rescue center. And so yeah, so that's what happened to my bird captain, is he went to a rescue center. And I just kind of gave up on it because there was nothing I could do at the time, like nowhere to keep it. And there's a part of me that wonders if we could ever reconnect with that bird by any chance, if we could find that rescue center, find out if they still have it or not. Like maybe no one will adopt it because it's mean. I don't know. But then living there, I think I went back to Denver. What did I do when I went back to Denver? Oh, that's right. I went and stayed with David's mother. Okay, so I went and stayed with David's mother. And I was thinking, I want to bring it to that point. So I'm talking about like a 3-year span of it just kind of went by in such a flurry. We did have some really interesting times. Chris had this really nice little VW GTI. He let me drive that for a while until we got the DUI, and then I was like, being punished by him. He's like, "I'm not letting you drive my car anymore," you know, after what we went through, you know. And we left on bad terms, but I think the nice thing is since then Chris and I have reconnected, and I like to think we're friends again. He understands where I was pushed to do that. So it's really an interesting time in my life where, That's something again where I feel like I've been living near homeless, you know, living in that warehouse space and all that stuff, and getting thrown in jail a couple different times. Oh my god, dude. Oh man, and then after I moved to Denver, I got thrown in jail for Chris's stuff getting thrown out. So that's like 3 different times there. And then I'm just trying to think like what was going on all along, you know. So like it just seemed like the same old schmame old. Like, you know, I don't feel like a lot of like it's like I've been just trying to tread water and keep my chin above water, you know, just trying to survive all these years. Like when I look at, you know, going from being a cab driver to like the day I left Denver in 2009, which I'm going to bring that up to that point eventually. All I've been doing is just trying to survive, just trying to make rent, just trying to keep a job, and it's super exhausting, and I'm so tired of it, you know. At any rate, I think I've covered, you know, kind of, you know, since I've seen my parents last in 99, you know, my dad last in 99, I might have seen my mom, you know, like kind of coming through like the airports. I can't remember if they saw me in 2004, if that was another time, but I think I had my mom come up and see me at the Acacia once. And then it went a long time. I think I didn't see my mom again until I got up to Montana. So like 99 and the 2000, that's the last time I'd see my dad at the place on D Avenue and at my grandma's house on Palmetto Drive. And then coming back into the new millennium, so it took me 4 years to get back home, and by then he'd moved to another trailer right down in Key West. My grandma had moved into another place, and it just doesn't seem to have the same sentiment, you know? So like when I dream about going home, I dream of my grandma's place where she lived when I seen them last in 99, you know, and that's like where a lot of important things have happened in my life. But it just seems like since 2000, life has just been a blur. I've been just sort of on rolling rocks, you know, like I think living in Greeley was kind of nice because we had that neat little apartment. That was like one of the best living situations. But then after that, it's like, okay, I lived with that friend that bailed on me. We just had that like one big room, and let me see. And then living at that lady's house, like sleeping on her couch, then to the warehouse space. And the next thing you know, I think 2005, you know, after I got out of jail, I went and got my stuff and I went down. So my friend David is the one that was selling me the pot, and you know, and I wasn't gonna rat him off. So like him and his mom were doing me a favor by letting me live with them. But she had this house that was like full of shit, and I mean she was just a pack rat, and it had cockroaches, and like I could barely take it. So I made friends with this girl Desiree in the club scene, you know, and like we'd known each other off and on over the years, and so she gave me a place to live because she had this apartment with a few rooms in it. So she let me rent a room there. So that's where I'm gonna end this. Is just seems like so by I don't know, I'd say by spring of 2005, you know, I had made that connection with Desiree. So I'm thinking 2000, that's like 3 years of being on Rolling Rocks, you know, and so anyways, I'd like to end this here, and I'll come back another time and share a little bit more about my life story. And I don't think I have as many pictures, but I still have a lot of colorful stories I'd like to share. So you take care, and I'll talk to you soon.